Hello everyone, my name is Curtis. Today I'm doing a review for DTF St. Louis, episode 2. This episode focused on the following storylines. So the first storyline was about infidelity, and so we did get the backstory behind Clark and Carol. We saw how everything happened, or at least we believe we saw how everything happened, because when it comes to Clark and when it comes to Carol, they have two different stories about how things happen, but we did see multiple different perspectives. And so we did see how they ended up meeting each other, how they were talking, how they were flirting, how they end up, going to hotels, having sex and everything like that. And so we did see how that pretty much played out. When it comes to the second storyline, we saw how Clark, the jealousy got the best of him, because even though him and Carol were doing all of this stuff behind the scenes, she was still in love with her husband. She was not willing to leave her husband, which is something that we found out in the last episode. So when they were looking at the text messages, we saw that Clark, he really was trying to push for them to be together, but she was like, no, it's not going to happen. I want to be with my husband. I want to grow old with my husband. And so we saw how his jealousy got the best of him. The third storyline centered around the fact that Clark, he's a liar. He's somebody who bends the truth. So when him and Carol were having a conversation, his wife actually called him. He ignored the call, and he told her that it was some people from a job. So he said that he owned this demolition company off of the coast of Canada, which later on in the episode we found out was a lie. And then this kind of goes into the fourth storyline. In regards to Floyd, we found out that Floyd, he's gay, he's down low, he has sex with men, he was meeting guys on the app. And so when it comes to Clark, he found out this information. He knew because they were having conversations with each other. And so he actually created a fake profile on the app, which is DTF St. Louis. And so he kind of set up a meeting between him and the fake profile. And this, of course, ended up leading to his death. In the next storyline, we ended up finding out way more information about what happened. We ended up finding out that when it came to the drug that he ingested, as far as with Floyd, that Clark, he actually got that prescription a couple of days prior to it. So Clark, he was really sloppy. Like, I'm not really sure what was going on. Like, even when it came to the profile, you had to have a subscription. He used his own credit card to pay for the profile subscription. So I'm just like, Clark, what is going on? So they have your card information. They can link it to you. They have the IP address. And then also, you got this prescription a couple of days prior. And the prescription was inside of that Bloody Mary that I was talking about last episode that he drunk. And so I was like, come on now, bro, you're just sloppy. The last storyline centered around that Playgirl magazine. So remember when Donahue, he first went to the crime scene, looked down, he ended up seeing a picture from a Playgirl magazine and it was a naked guy. Well, it turns out that that was actually Floyd from back in the day. So when it comes to Jody, she actually went to visit Carol because she wanted to ask her a couple of questions about the investigation. And during that conversation, she was like, you know what, I do need to get some paperwork, some documentation. Can you tell me where you keep the bills? So she told her, and so she ended up going into this room. And when she went into the room, she found this box. It said something along the lines of sharp objects and exposed film. And when she went in there, she found multiple magazines from the Playgirl. And so she ended up confronting Carol, asked her about it, and that's when Carol confirmed that that was Floyd from back in the day. My overall thoughts on this episode is that this was a really good episode. This episode was actually way more detailed than the last one. I was like, damn, it's a lot of stuff going on. There was a whole lot happening. There were a lot of plot twists, but when it comes to the show, I believe that there are only 7 episodes, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised that there was just so much happening, but I was just like, goodness gracious, we learned a whole lot. Alright, so now that I got the quick recap out of the way, I'm going to get started with the full review. So the episode begins with the flashback, and this goes back to the cornhole celebration that Floyd was having that he invited Clark and his wife to. And so we see Clark, we see Carol, they're walking toward each other and they are smiling, they're laughing. You can tell that it's chemistry from the beginning. And so they do end up having a conversation and they find out that they have a lot in common. And while they are having a conversation, Floyd and Clark's wife, they're having a conversation. And this is when we find out that Richard, he's actually in dance classes. Well, let me take that back. So they actually signed him up for dance classes because they felt like he really wasn't into any activities. So they was like, let's see if he'll try dancing. Unfortunately, he has not attended one dance class. So when it comes to Floyd, he was like, you know what? I've already paid for it. It's a 3-month course. And so he actually decided that he's going to go and take the dance courses and that he actually plans to renew the subscription once it ends. Going back to Clark and Carol, they're still having a conversation. Carol asks him if he's a weatherman. He was like, yeah. And then she's like, you know what? I know who you are. So she starts to kind of like toot his horn a little bit. She's like, you're my favorite. You are number one. I always tune in. I know what channel you're on. I know what time you come on. So of course he's feeling this, right? And so this is a time where he tells her that he has this deep sea demolition company off of the coast of Canada, and that the people that he worked with, they call him the Bang Master, and then they also refer to him as Big Bang, indicating that he has a big dick. And of course, when it comes to Carol, she likes it because she is freaky. After this, we actually go to the dance class and we see Floyd in there with younger kids. And I will say that he has a lot of energy, he has a lot of charisma. He's a really good actor. But when it comes to this particular scene, this is where he decided to bring back up the fact that he has this curved dick. And then when it comes to Clark, he's like, you know what, you keep talking about this. Why don't you tell me what happened? Like, what led to this, right? Because Floyd said this isn't something that kind of like happened like naturally. It happened like for some type of trauma. And so Clark was like, well, what happened? And so he starts to tell the story about how he had an interview in Chicago and that there was this guy in the middle of the street. He was acting crazy. And so he actually went out to the middle of the street, grabbed him, pulled him out. And then he ended up getting on the news. Well, they were trying to interview him. And they asked him, do you feel like a hero? And then we do not know what happened after that because he stopped the story because the dance instructor ended up coming back in. Clark was like, well, wait a minute. Like, I wanted to know what else happened. But he's like, you know what? Maybe another time. After this, Floyd, he goes outside. He gets into his car and he tries to start it, but unfortunately doesn't start. So he asks Clark if he can give him a jump. Unfortunately, it does not work. And as this is going on, we see Carol. She actually rises up. And Floyd tells her that the car won't start and that he won't be able to get it fixed until his next paycheck. And so she's like, oh, damn, so I guess we're down to one car, huh? And so Floyd's like, you know what, let me go inside and let the instructor know that I have to leave my car here for a while so that way she doesn't try to get it towed. And of course, once he goes inside, Carol and Clark, they start to flirt with each other, right? And so in the next scene, we see that both Floyd and Carol, they were at the bus stop. And so Floyd's like, damn, I cannot believe that we were at the bus stop. And so Carol's like, I can't believe it either because I was expecting you to actually take the car to work. He was like, why would I take the car to work? Why would I let my wife just sit at the bus stop? She was like, because you work further than me. Plus, you need to take Richard to school. Like, just take the car. I'm going to be fine. Like, I work closer. It's going to be fine. So he's like, okay, cool. And so he gets into the car. He pulls up next to the bus stop. And he says, I love you. But she can't hear him over the car. So he turns the car off. He's like, you know what? I love you. She's like, I love you too. Then he tries to start the car, but it doesn't start. I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. But he's like, you know what? I'm going to keep trying, keep trying, keep trying. And he is eventually able to start the car and he drives to work. The bus does eventually come, and so she does get on the bus. And while she's on the bus, she looks very sad, very depressed. You can tell she has a lot on her mind. And so once she actually reaches her destination, she gets off of the bus and she starts walking. And as she's walking, she sees this huge billboard of Clark. And so she does look over to her left and she sees this juice bar. So I did not mention this earlier, but they were having a conversation about this juice bar. So she does go inside, I guess with the host are running into Clark. And so she does end up running into him. While the two of them are there, they start talking about, her umpire duties. And so she tells him that whenever she brings this up to Floyd, he pretty much ignores her, like he doesn't want to talk about it. I was like, yeah, because it makes his dick soft. He doesn't really want to have a conversation about that because I guess she looks a little manly. And so as the two of them are talking, Clark, his phone rings and it's his wife. And so he actually ignores the phone call and he claims that it's work related. Carol decides to revert the conversation back to baseball. And she says, I really wish I can go to a professional baseball game, but I can't because the tickets are so expensive. And this is when Clark was like, well, when it comes to my company, we actually get group tickets, so I can actually take you to one. So she pulls out her phone. She already had the app up. I was like, okay, Carol, I'll see what you up to. And so she's like, how about we go on this particular day? And they do end up going to the baseball game. And while they are there, Carol, she has 3 beers. She has 2 in her hands and she has 1 in her lap, or between her legs. And she's like, oh, these 2 are for me. Yours is down there. Because she wants him to put his hand down there. And so he seems a little uncomfortable at first, but eventually he does end up grabbing the beer from between her legs. It's at this time that Carol decides to invite Clark to one of the games that she's going to be at, where she's the umpire. And she says that Floyd is not going to be there. And so Clark, he does end up going to the game. And then next thing you know, we see that the affair has officially started. And so when it comes to Clark, we find out that he has this thing about weight placement. So he wants women to sit on his face. And he wants them to just do random activities. So you can read a book, you can look at your watch, you can play on your phone. It really doesn't matter as long as you are sitting on my face. I can eat your ass, eat your pussy. And so that's pretty much what he likes to do. In the next scene, we see Donahue, we see Jody. They're having a little back and forth because Jody wants to interview Clark. But Donahue was like, no, you need to interview Carol. She was like, no, I really want to interview Clark. But he's like, listen, I am the lead on this. You have to do what I say. Like, we're not about to keep going back and forth. I'm going to interview Clark. You interview Carol. I'll see you later. And so she is upset, but she does end up going over to see Carol. And I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier when I was doing my quick recap. Her and Carol, they have a conversation. And Carol, she says that it was Clark who was the one who initiated everything. But Jody, she's smart enough to know, like, I don't really think so. You were the one who started it. It's during the scene that we find out that Floyd, he did not have a life insurance policy. But also, this is when Carol tells Jody that when it comes to that demolition company off of the coast of Canada, it wasn't true. It was fake. She just recently found that information out. And so when it comes to Jody, she tells Carol that when it comes to the mail, she's going to have to take the mail into evidence. And then also when it comes to future mail, at least during the investigation, they're going to have to collect that as well. So she's not going to get the mail. But as soon as they finish the investigation, they will return everything. And then this is also when she inquires about, where they keep the bills. This is where she finds the box. This is where she sees the Playgirl magazines. And then this is when we found out that Floyd was the one who was in the Playgirl magazine, and that's something that he did back in the day when he was younger. And this is when the episode got really, really good. So when it comes to Donahue, he says, Clark, you were doing all of this stuff for Carol, like you two are making your dreams come true sexually, but she still would not leave her husband. Like, how did that make you feel? And so we see a flashback, and they actually went to a concert. So Floyd, he was the sign language interpreter at the concert, and so he was actually using the dance moves that he learned at the dance class. And so while they were there, it's crazy because Clark's wife was there as well. She asked him, like, do you two want some water? They were like, no. So she walked out to get herself some water, and then they actually were holding hands with each other, right? And so as they were holding hands, Carol, she looks up and she sees Floyd, and he is having such a good time. Like, he is really energetic because remember in the last episode, Floyd was saying that he was struggling with his weight. He wasn't really feeling the best. And so to see him up there super energetic, having such a good time, this made Carol feel away. And she's like, oh my God, like, look at him up there. And she actually snatches her hand away from Clark. And this is when she tells him that she loves him, she cares about him, and that she wants to grow old with him. And then Clark was like, oh, this is some bullshit. Donahue was just like, okay. So the two of you were at a concert, you were holding hands, your wife is pretty much in arm's distance, you really do not care. And then she looks up at her husband, he's super energetic, bringing back all of these memories, and she says that she loves him and that she's not going to leave him. So he was like, okay. What I'm going to do, I'm going to get closer to Floyd so that way he can trust me. And so before Clark can fully answer the question, one of the deputies comes and they knock on the door. And so Don, he ends up going into another area, and this is where we find out that Floyd actually hooked up with a man, and then after that, he was actually set to hook up with another person named Tiger. And I talked about this earlier in the review, but Tiger is Clark. The profile is registered under Clark's name. We see that he actually paid for the subscription, and so of course Don is just like, oh man, we got him now. Clark, he denies it initially, so when it comes to Donahue, he decides to set up a meeting with the guy that Floyd hooked up with, and we find out that, they kiss, and then also the guy, he kind of played with Floyd's butt, and then also they were kind of grinding. And so Donahue, he does end up going back in the room with Clark, and Clark does eventually admit that he is Tiger. This is when we get a really, really good flashback. So remember in last episode, Floyd and Carol, they end up going over to Clark's house. They were set to play cornhole, but when it came to Clark and Floyd, they end up putting together the swing set for Clark's daughters. And so prior to that party, we see that Clark and Carol, they were having a conversation through text. So Clark was trying to convince her to leave Floyd, but she's like, you know what? I'm not leaving Floyd. I love him. I want to grow old with him. And so this is when he actually saw the news segment about the new dating app to DTF St. Louis. And so flash forward to actually at the event that they were at when they were on the swing set, this is when he brought up the information about the hookup site to Floyd. We then flash forward within the flashback, and we see when Floyd received a notification from Tiger saying that he was interested. And then also we see that Clark is with them, so therefore it shows that Clark was fully aware that Floyd, he was on a down low, that he liked to have sex with men. And so Floyd was like, you know what, I really want to meet him, which is crazy to me because the guy did not have a profile picture as far as with Tiger. So I was just like, why do you want to meet this person so soon without a picture? We go back to the present, and once we go back to the present, we see the deputy, he actually comes inside. He shows Donahue a paper. So Donahue was like, okay, put it on the projector. And so once he puts it on the projector, this is where we can see that the drug that was inside of that Bloody Mary drink, we see that it's actually a prescription that Clark had gotten, I think it was like 6 days prior. So that's why I was saying that Clark, he was so sloppy. Like, you're on the app and you're using your credit card to pay for the subscription. And then when it comes to this drug that was inside the drink, you got the prescription 6 days prior. Like, you didn't think that they were going to link it to you? Don tells Clark that there's a chance that he could face a death penalty based off of the evidence. So of course now Clark, he's scared, he's nervous. And so I do want to go over to Jody really quickly. So Jody, she ends up going to that juice bar that Clark and Carol were at, and she first tries to act coy, like, "Oh, can I get a little drink?" But then she's like, "You know what? I'm actually a detective." And then she pulls out a picture of Carol. She's like, "Hey, do you know this person?" And so the cashier is like, "Oh yeah, that's Watermelon Breeze." And then she calls another cashier over, like, "Do you know this person?" She's like, "Oh yeah, that's Watermelon Breeze. That's the only drink that she gets." So Jody was like, "Oh, so that's the only drink that she gets?" She was like, "Yeah, that's her thing." And so Jody was like, "So it would be unusual if she got something else like to go get her." And so they was like, "Oh yeah, because she always get the Watermelon Breeze, except this one particular time, which was really, really strange, which unfortunately we did not get a full explanation of that." Jody ends up going back to the sheriff's office, and when she gets there, she sees Don, and he pretty much catches her up about everything that happened. And so when it comes to Jody, she's like, "You know what, thank you for that information. I appreciate it, but I actually have some information for you." So he's like, "What's up?" And so she's like, "You know, when it comes to that Playgirl magazine, when it comes to the guy that was naked that was on there." And so he was like, "Yeah." She was like, "So it turns out that that was actually Floyd." He was like, "Wait, what?" She was like, "Yes, that was Floyd from when he was younger back in the day." After this, we see Clark. He calls his wife. She does not answer because she's actually looking at the news as everything is happening. And so she knows what's going on. And so he tells her through voicemail, like, "I'm facing a death penalty. I can't believe this. Like, it's a lot going on. The situation happened with Kara. I'm sorry. I apologize." And then next thing you know, we see the deputies. They are walking him down the hallway. And as they're walking him down the hallway, he looks over to his left and he sees his billboard with his face on it. He's just like, "Damn, I really fucked up." And that was the end of the episode. Thank you all so much for watching. Really do appreciate it. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye.